It's time for us to take this more global, at least for us to feel more global. Where is the canvas that we can experiment more globally? And Burning Man is one of them. It's the big laboratory. It's where you can really test your ideas and your creations. And everyone said, oh, you are being far too ambitious doing this your first year. And I said, no, we've been dealing with the environment. Granted, nothing like this, but we can do it.
Look where it is. We are so far from any kind of civilization that could protest this. So it's like we'll go to the most inhospitable place in the country and do the most craziest things that we can perceive to do and feel liberated through that.
This is going to be way more raw. It was just way more raw than anything I had in mind or that I envisioned.
It just kind of forced a totally different perspective, and all the expectations were just stripped away. So it's like, okay, well, now that we have a new canvas, what can we make this look like? My pitch was that we were going to take water poems that I've done, while I was doing the water project, some of Cynthia's stuff, some of Parker's stuff, and we would actually orchestrate and do these songs.
The topic of water had been picked by the museum as a topic that Cynthia and team wanted to develop and cultivate.
With Corwin and Parker and trying to do this multimedia performance, I just said, why don't we go to Burning Man? Let's try to pull it off. And everybody goes, yeah, let's go to Burning Man,
This thing's set so it's trained so it will always put the light beam towards that secondary mirror. So wherever the sun is, it's going like this, and it's making it so it will shine the light always into that secondary mirror. So then the beam comes like this of the sun, it hits this mirror, it comes up, hits to this prism here, and then it bends the light into a rainbow like this, and then sends it out to the rainbow light box. Since there's a ton of water in here, the pressure's major, so if you look along the front of this, you can see it bulging slightly. Because what was happening is I had this little light like this, and I was like, what's going on? I was like, oh my God, it took me forever to find out that it was focusing it. Finally, me and Safa did an entire spreadsheet on reflectivity of water, like this. And all the calculations in the world said we should see a prism right there. But we didn't account for the little bit of deflection that was making that into a giant lens. And how I figured it out was I took a laser pointer, a real strong one. I put it right in the middle of this, and at night, I bounced it from here, and you could see it going here into the mirror. You could see it bending through the prism, and you could see it shooting out towards the house. And I was like, oh, that's the, I could see how it was bending it differently. This is 1919 grid, so it's perfectly, you go count 10 down and 10 in, and there's 5. And it's not even like interactive in a way. It's more like you kind of get to engage with it. For me, if it doesn't do something, it's not alive. With my computer animations, it's meant to kind of move consciousness. The water spirit, she starts off in a desert environment. It's kind of this apocalyptic place, maybe like seeing into a future situation, or even currently right now there's people all over the planet that don't have water, that are in a situation where they're trying to find water. The perception is that, oh, this lady's thirsty and she's looking for water. So she goes into this cave, dives down into the depths of the planet, and she gets the water forms, the aquaforms. And that's the movement and the vibration. It's like, that's what keeps the water alive, is that the fact that it does vortices, and it goes down and collects oxygen and collects minerals, and it does this whole dance down the rivers. She it coaxes the essence of the water to come, and that's the essence shape. And she takes that essence shape and she puts that in the egg vessel. She's taking the beginnings of this new way of understanding water. And then she starts to do this kind of, the cloud hands deal, which to me is like, as this hand is showering down, this hand is evaporating, right? And as evaporation happens, this side, the cloud floats across the sky, and as it's ready, it starts to come, pouring down, and then this hand evaporates. So this, to me, is the symbol of that cycle. Okay, so she starts to do this cycle. She's like breathing into that cycle, and then the clouds start forming around her hands, and the rain clouds start, and then it just gets completely out of hand, and pretty soon you're going, wait a minute, this lady's not just hallucinating in the desert, she's actually a big part of this thing. And then you get the flood, where it just rushes, this water pouring everywhere and just flooding. So it's kind of like definitely all the archetypes that have to do with the great floods. Its curvature is it's amazingly perfect. It's just really, really pretty. And I think that plays a lot into its energy potential. So we have the route 2, route 3, and route 5. So this whole thing is basically made out of Sekajoni. So I think when we do this, we're basically projecting that.
Yes, you can tell.
See how it does it?
This is a study in fractal geometry that doesn't have a written code yet, you know that?
Yeah, it can it? That thing was a one-night download. Okay, I was just sitting there, I was just like, I saw the whole thing come like this, and I drew it all out.
To do something kind of neo-pagan, neo-shamanic, and techno, to me, around water is an incredible canvas. Everyone involved in the Contaqua project are people that I had imagined or dreamt that I would get to work with. The opportunity to do a large theatrical production is, for me, nirvana. We're talking about Contaqua, the show very much being a modern shamanic fireside shadow play.
All lead our ladder against that. Is yours truly where you want it to be? Think about it. Physical force brought about by following our encounter
an invisible boundary which when crossed in endeavor to live the life of our dreams raises us musicians and the dancers and all of the media would be inside. You could create a collage of imagery onto the shell of the dome using kind of ancient shamanic shadow play and other artistic styles that we could kind of create a multimedia experience that was really dome driven. That was the theme, that was the motif that we wanted to express.
And then it just kept growing exponentially, and it ended up being a rather large undertaking.
I came back to the museum in December and Tim was talking about, oh, we're going to Burning Man, you'll be interested, because he knew I had gone to Burning Man 2 times before. And so I was sort of like, oh, really? The whole museum's going to Burning Man.
We brought a large staff from the museum. We shut down our whole organization for this 10 days and said, this is part of your job, this is part of your work.
I was nervous. I was really nervous to go to such a chaotic environment.
I was in charge of getting the supplies, gearing up the group, establishing the route, making sure we had enough water, making sure we had enough sunscreen, create the packing list and get everyone outfitted and kind of prepare briefings on what to expect in the desert. It's always good to have some kind of plan, and whether you stick to it 100% or not is irrelevant as long as everyone gets there safely.
It's a clean map of a canvas when you come in, and then you have to deal with perspective, you have to deal with the backdrop of the mountains, you have to deal with the dust around the perimeter. It's flat, it's white, it's in the middle of the desert. You can't predict the conditions, the climate conditions are severe. Everybody comes in their RVs and their trucks, and they've got tents, and people come prepared.
When we got there wasn't even really a city. There was just a lot of people setting up things. And all of a sudden it was just like, it dawned on me that, you know, this is going to be kind of a fly by the seat of your pants kind of gig.
I manage our outdoor amphitheater as part of some of the duties here at the museum. So I've done a lot of production. And so my job, I went out there early on, was to make sure things were set up, make sure all the power was right, make sure everything was in place, make sure all our partners were all on board. I mean, we had Earth Dance, we had the Cataqua Band, we had Cosmic Goo, we had a lot of different collaborative partners, and just to make sure everything was there and ready to go.
We got here Friday evening, and it was dusty and blowy, and Saturday was almost whiteout all day long. It's been a little challenging. The scissor lift doesn't work very well. It's spotty. The wind makes it very hard. All the dust makes it a little hard, and I have a virgin crew. I'm the only one who's ever built a dome. So it's taking some time, but we're there. We're very close. Come this morning, we'll have it done.
Exactly. As ritual theatre people, you know, that's what we do. We use the medium of music and dance to try and create a ritual experience. So there's like a deeper message and a deeper meaning that's actually being presented to the public.
And I guess I have this vision of artists, performers, engineers, architects, you name it, politicians, collaborating to create something of beauty, of wonder, of theater, and what I learned is that is going to be really hard to do. The vision is not invented until the people invent it together.
Immediately we were hit with a dust storm within like 4 hours after we got there, and we're scrambling to pack everything in and get it covered.
So I mean, we sat for, it seemed like forever, but I think it was only like 24 or 48 hours without really doing anything, just because the wind and the environment wouldn't let us get our dome right.
So we're kind of like, okay, this is, you know, what we got to work with.
Have a rush.
I was here to support the museum and to support Chautauqua with materials, costumes, makeup, that sort of stuff, but also taking care of the camp and, you know, visually, and just real involved with the museum now, so just kind of doing whatever I got to do.
We had a dysfunctional scissor lift, created a few day delay. There was some disappointed people in not being able to get their artwork in.
We were like 3 days into it before the dome even went up. We knew that we needed to, you know, show up guns loaded, you know, with the idea of what we're going to do. We heard enough that it's not like you go there and start trying to figure out how you're going to do something. So I rehearsed over and over how to put up the raindrop chandelier, like, you know, quick, you know, just to put it up. So we had rope, climbing gear, we had ascenders. I had like some backup stuff, so if someone dropped a bolt in the sand, we'd know exactly where it was. The concentrator on the top of the dome, we had the lashings for that and how that was going to work. And real slow now. 1, 2, 3. Okay, good. Now ease back on the ascender. It was really neat. Once that dome came up, the rest of the crew, everybody was showing up, and in one kind of half night, we cranked it up, using all the stuff, and it worked flawlessly. We just went up, we dropped the raindrops down and everything, and it worked great. The heliostats, you'll see them, they'll come out. They're basically like a high-tech sundial. And it has a little little sundial on the side, and it's a mirror. And what it does is it will track the sun like this all day long, and the whole time it will direct a ray of light into one direction that you choose. We'll have two heliostats here. One's gonna go through the prism, bounce back through to the light box, the rainbow light box, and create the rainbow. And the other heliostat, we're gonna attempt to do a throw about a mile this way to our dome to hit the 45-degree mirror concentrator to go down into the rainbow light box.
Get out there, you're not going to understand what it means to be in 120-degree heat during the day and 40-degree cool at night, and 100-mile-an-hour windstorms in between.
This is it. No, I got a weather report and I started telling everyone around camp, and then I got all my tools together and was on my way out here to batten everything down, and right when I walked in the door,
moment at which the skin ripped off of the dome, I had this almost just mystical surrender experience to say, well, this is meant to be. So why fight it? Just go with it.
It looked like looked nothing like what anyone had expected it to look like. So I think that was what I liked about it. It was kind of raw in that way. The stripped down dome, the playa just out there.
I was standing in the dome when the skin tore off, and my instant reaction was, oh wow. It'll be interesting to see what happens next, because that was the curveball of all curveballs. So much of the show was set up for visuals and the immersive factor.
The opportunity to do a large theatrical production is, for me, nirvana. As an artist, it's hard, and I have a lot of empathy for other artists, because as an artist, I'm totally struggling in terms of finding the forum and the format and the platform for showcasing or performing my art.
We were stripped to the core of something that turned out to be very primal, and I think that's kind of the nature of Burning Man. We got out there only to be completely slammed by Mother Nature herself, and we had our own kind of cathartic death and rebirth cycle. So that it was very poetic.
it was humbling, and I think, you know, everybody got what they needed at the end of the day, or it worked out like it was supposed to, but you know, better than we could have architected it.
What ended up happening was this, you know, almost retro cave-esque shamanic performance of fire dancers. It was very crude, and I mean that in the primal sense, not in any, you know, it was very primal. It was not techno. There was not, you know, high theatrics pageantry and Disney 8 high-def projectors. We were stripped to the core of something that turned out to be very primal, and I think that's kind of the nature of Burning Man, and the humbling of that journey and that experience was to finally, you know, we were left with this kind of raw clay, and what could we pull together? Well, it was very humble in its ambitions and scope, but nevertheless it was potent without all of the theatrics.
It was Ramakrishna, one of the great Indian mystics, who said, you know, do not seek illumination unless you do so as a man whose hair is on fire seeks a pond.
We don't know why we're here, other than it was, the idea was, let's do one
let's do
final
closure
on this.
on
It's
Burning
like
Man.
the edges, though. I mean, it
Yeah.
just keeps. That's what I keep saying.
That's right, there are no edges.
Yeah.
At Burning Man, through the museum and through Chris Decker at Earth Dance, Greg Ellis and I were introduced to each other, and it was an instant kind of doppelganger recognition. So we thought about kind of our favorite soundtracks that were that moved us in some way. So we talked about Sgt. Pepper's, we talked about Dark Side of the Moon, we talked about Pink Floyd's The Wall, we talked about Styx Paradise Theater, we talked about, you know, a whole bunch of, you know, concept albums. We ended up writing and recording 14 original tracks. The mythopoetic libretto for the thing starts and says, with the procession of with each procession of the equinoxes, a new mythology arises, and the status quo is abandoned for what is next.
A year or two, what would you want to continue? What would you do?
Well, there's a whole bunch of clay in my shed still.
Make more aquaforms.
Yeah.
Aquaforms and vessels.
Yeah.
Oh, those egg vessels.
yeah,
Living water. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I would love to see this soundtrack played inside planetariums with a visual show, and I think it'd be a great Thursday, Friday night, midnight movie kind of thing.
Yeah. You can do it with, you know, what we have. Yeah. And that's, and that, you know, found a lot of different ways to do that, so it's pretty exciting.
Have you? What,
Yeah.
Can you tell one of them?
No,
not really.
They're good secrets, no.
I can tell you, but he'd have to kill you.
Basically, I make a virtual dome in 3D, and then I shoot it with a virtual dome camera in 3D, so it's kind of complex. But so I can shoot with high def, you know, and then put it on the virtual dome through projectors in 3D, and then refilm it.
Actually, I'd seen that film when we watched it again. The chandelier, when it goes up and it's there and it's stabilized, and that whole storm pulls the whole cover of the dome.
Is there footage before it got
Yeah.
I gotta be curious to see, because I never really
saw it.
You can see it moving, but it's not. It's pretty stable.
Oh yeah.
And the wind's
it weathered
blowing
the storm. It weathered the
and
storm.
then afterwards, there's a rainbow.
The rainbow went right through the thing. It was like, wow, you can't make this up.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
To me, that's sort of the whole icon for the entire thing we did.
Yeah.
There's still that stabilization of creativity, and yet things are temporal, and you have to accept it, especially when nature's involved.